Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Motorsports. Joe Samaniego here, along with Dan Seri from Racer the Girls Behind the Helmet. We encourage everyone watching to comment in the chat room. We'd love to see your comments, questions, and opinions. And a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You too can invest in the Grid Network through Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee, a one-time contribution for all of us here at the Grid Network. I will bring more and more programming each and every week. And Daniel, the season's starting to wrap up for everybody. Most seasons are down to 10 races or less. Some NASCAR, well, they're always going to have quite a bit of races, and F1 getting down there as well. But one of the big races this weekend, Michaela Okulinski, what a race weekend we saw from her.
Yeah, hello everyone. Good morning. As you mentioned, it's kind of a period in the year where most of the championships are now going to the summer break here. So not as much racing as probably it will restart in September for the final leg of the championships. And yes, we still a couple of interesting races to follow, and also an interesting stat that I personally saw. We didn't have that many races last weekend, but we had a lot of female podiums and victories. So it was quite a big percentage. So that was kind of interesting to see, and I was pleased to to report on. One of them was Mikaela Okulinski, a Swedish driver that we've seen racing previously in STCC, in the Scandinavian Touring Car Championship. She's been the first woman to win there, the best woman in the history of the championship to finish third in the championship last year. But also she's racing in Extreme E, which is extremely popular, and now she's leading the championship for Nico Rosberg's team. So quite a popular race in the last couple of years. And she started, of course, in touring cars. Then she's now also doing some rallycross stuff and going more into the off-road racing scene. But she had, interestingly, her very first racing weekend in GT4 machinery. She joined in a one-off appearance the Porsche Scandinavia. So it was interesting to see her what she could do for a very first time in a GT4 car. And she said it's cool that she said before the weekend that she was not expecting much, that she was not expecting certainly a podium, because it was just to have some basic experience of the car. And straight away in FP1 and FP2 she led both sessions straight away. So kind of had to resettle expectations for that race. And led both the practice session on Friday. Then she was P6 in qualifying. She had a very first good race. The first race she was P4 at one point, but she had a penalty for a contact, so she slipped up to P11 in race 1. But in race 2 again, she started from 6th place. and she had a dominant race. She basically overtook one opponent after the other, one lap after the other, and really won the race. So first victory for her in her very first weekend in the Porsche Carrera Cup Scandinavia, and other first race in GT4 machinery. So that's quite something for Michaela Olen-Kotulinski, who is also racing in the Nitro Rallycross Championship. So I think we will. She's doing really well in basically all the kind of cars and racing series and forms of racing that she's trying. So it's really cool to see, because today it's not that common, to see a driver that can do well in basically any kind of motorsports that they try.
Yeah, it's also where for a driver to go from one platform to a different platform, it is just something else of a challenge. I mean, even here in the United States, we've seen drivers do IndyCar to NASCAR. A lot of folks assume, oh, they're the same. They've raced at several tracks that are similar, but then they see it is a world of difference. Montoya, of course, did F1, then, IndyCar F1, then back to NASCAR and did some IndyCar. Some success, but it is such a challenge. And what Michaela is doing is really phenomenal. Now, Dan, one driver, speaking a little bit about IndyCar, Simona de Silvestro. She had another IndyCar race weekend, but it was at Nashville, the Music City Grand Prix. That racetrack is starting to develop a reputation of it just go through cars. We've seen it was a really long race. More than 40% of it was under caution. Cars in the wall, including Roman Grosjean. Last year, we all remember Herta going out. Simona de Silvestro, she qualified 21st, but unfortunately finished at the tail end of the field 26th after an incident that also included Dalton Kellett, Pato O'Ward. They were all out early on lap 25. We know she's going to be back at Laguna Seca. That is a permanent road course, not a street course, and not a street course is similar to what we saw in Nashville, where there's some narrow aspects and it's just going through cars left and right. For Beretta Autosports and Simona de Silvestro, do you think Laguna Seca will be a really great opportunity to rebound? And do you think the Music City Grand Prix, that street circuit itself, we've heard Ben on Grid Encore and folks on Grid Live, might be a little bit of a change needed? Do you think that was the case? Because it was a really long race, not to mention the delay for weather.
Oh yeah, especially for us watching here from the Europe, it was quite of a challenge to see in the middle of the night, especially yellow after yellow, every caution. But yeah, I think starting from this point, I think as Pato O'Ward wrote on his Twitter, he renamed Nashville Crashville. And it is kind of correct. It was quite a crash fest, which at one point beforehand that it's going to be probably a more uncommon race compared to some of the others. But at one point it just does not become a lot more enjoyable. So probably they will have to look a little bit into the layout for the coming years, because it is a cool event. It's quite scenic with in that city. It is cool, but of course after two editions that went pretty much the same in the same way with a lot of cautions. I think something that it could be done to improve a little bit the racing, because there's not many passing opportunities, and in those places it's really easy to end up in the wall. So this is unfortunately what happened to Simona. It was no fault of her own. She got caught into an incident on lap 29. She was making some improvements at that point, starting P21 as you mentioned. She was around that P20 position, but ultimately I think that with only 3 race weekends on their schedule for Beretta Autosport, including a street circuit, wasn't probably the best of ideas, because we know that Simona she has quite a big experience, but she's been out of a race car for quite some time. She's racing she was racing last year in the ADAC GT Master in Germany. but that's a whole different story, different cars and the different circuits. So I think at that point this year she just needed to, to get back into the comfort, into a comfort zone, with trying to. She also had driven that IndyCar car before the new updates, so she really needed to learn a bit more. So I think in getting into a weekend with a street course, it wasn't probably the best of ideas, because you really don't want to take too many risks in a weekend like that, because otherwise you can easily end up in the wall, and what you need is a lot of mileage, a lot of track time, a lot of for the driver and also for the team, because of course also the team is very new. But apart from that, I think having the final round at Laguna Seca is really good for them. It's a track that can probably give both Paret Autosport and Simona de Silvestri the opportunities to show a little bit more of what they are capable of. It's great that probably they will be back on track next year. They're trying to work really hard for that. Of course, there's nothing set yet, but they're working really, really hard to make it happen. And the fact that they managed to get another round before the end of the season, it's really important to prepare for that. She had quite a strong couple of races prior to Nashville, so I think, and she was on a positive trend. She had a top 20 last in Mid Ohio, so I think that having the race at Laguna Seca is a good way forward for the team and for Simona. Of course, it's unfortunate how we ended in Nashville, but it happens to a lot of other drivers, for like Pato O'Ward, Alex Rossi, that made it back into the race, but some other drivers also were involved early on, and it's just the nature of those kind of tracks.
Yeah, just the nature of those tracks. I understand, especially Nashville. That's a growing market in the United States. Want to be in that race. But I agree with you. A mistake, you're in the wall. I remember last year, Callum Ilott, his first race was at Portland International Raceway. Lots of room. Unfortunately, it's grass, so if the grass is wet, you're going to go sliding into the tire barrier. But still, I always wonder if maybe he had gone with Portland, they could probably look at a finish in that race because it's a natural road course. Now, of course, next year, the schedule for Simona Paret Autosports, they want to add more races to get more sponsorship. Overall, do you feel they're doing the right approach of last year they did the Indy 500. This year, 3 races. Next year, a couple more races, and potentially the Indy 500. Do you see that being a realistic goal?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Also, the partnership, the new technical partnership with Ed Carpenter is working. It looks like it is working. Potentially, also having Carpenter racing on the ovals and Simona racing on road courses and street tracks could be interesting for them. But I think yes, they're doing things well. The team is really learning quick. There's a bunch of really talented people in that team. Also, Sabre Cook, for example, the W Series driver from the inaugural 2 seasons. She was working in the engineering side with Paretta. So I think that the team is really growing well. They set some realistic goals, as you mentioned. First year, won the Indy 500, then a couple more races, and added more races to the schedule. They're doing things step by step and in a realistic way. I think that's really important for a team. And so far they are hitting their marks. So hopefully, if they can again do the 500 next year and expand a little bit their plans on road courses, that would be ideal for them.
Very ideal for them. It's going to be really interesting to see. And of course, we'll be following the IndyCar season all year long, especially the last few races right here on the Grid Network. And of course, Portland Grand Prix, once they arrive, that's our backyard. Sure, everyone subscribe to us here. Now, Simona, she has several podiums in the past. This weekend, we saw quite a few podiums, as you mentioned. And while not a lot of racing weekends, but quite a lot of podiums that really exciting to see.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was a big weekend for IMSA at Road America. with some really exciting support series. We had, for example, the IMSA Mission Pilot Challenge, where Taylor Hagley is continuing to lead the TCR standings. Also, Sheena Monk had a very strong weekend. They could have, at one point, they were really in contention for a podium, but she did really well. But also, especially in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America last weekend, it was really successful for the female entries. We had 3 women ending up on the podium, so that it's pretty successful. And into different classes. In Pro-Am, there's Ashton Harrison. She's also racing in the SRO GT World Challenge America Championship at their debut in GT3, and she's doing really well. And in her 3rd season in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, she is currently leading by 2 points the Pro-Am class. She's doing extremely well also in the Lamborghini One Make series. And she had another 2 podiums so far. What is really interesting, and so far in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo this year, she had podiums in every single race this year. So we are into her 4th weekend, 4th double header. And she is really a clean record so far. Other 2 podiums this weekend, 3rd place in race 1 and a 2nd place in race 2, which was very tricky because we had also a red flag for the rain. At one point, all cars were going off track all around all over the place. It was a little bit more like the Nürburgring 2008 Formula One Grand Prix, if anyone of you remember, where cars were all going out at one single corner. There was a red flag, and Ashton did extremely well to keep it on track. And after the restart, also, she was at one point she was in the overall podium positions, and then she slipped a little bit back, but she still managed to retain 2nd place in Pro-Am. And also in the same class, there was the return of Ashley Freiberg, which she's a really interesting talent. She's been racing for quite some time. She raced in single seaters back in 2010, 2011. She was the first female driver to win in the Skip Barber racing schools. So definitely a driver that was looking to the good career some years ago. But unfortunately, she never had the funding to progress into single seaters. So she switched to sports cars, did really well in the what is now the Michelin Interpilot Challenge. She had some overall victories there, also some podiums. At one point, she made it into the IMSA in GTD. She did some very cool races like the 12-hour of Sebring, the 24-hour of Daytona. So a driver that showed a lot of potentials, but unfortunately she's been out of racing for quite some time, always for funding issues, unfortunately. Her last race in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo dated back to 2017, when she was the first woman to ever stand on a podium globally in the Lamborghini races. She made it back on track this weekend, and she had a phenomenal 2nd race in really tricky conditions. She did the 2nd stint, so the one under the rain, and she was really flying. She was really charging through the field and making a lot of passes, like 2 or 3 positions gained per lap when she was behind the wheel. And she finished 3rd in class and in the top 10 overall. So she was 8th, I believe, in the overall standing. So really great return to racing for Ashley Freiberg, and we definitely hope to see her back more because she definitely proved that she still has it. She still can be really competitive, even though she wasn't in the car a lot. She's 30 years old, so definitely a driver really young that can still do extremely well in sports car. And also in the LB class, we had the first victory in class for Charlie Martin. So the British driver did very well also in race 1. She had the victory and another podium in race 2. So extremely pleased for Charlie Martin. Had a really strong first stint and then managed to hand over the car to a teammate. So I think and she was also very fast in the previous weekends. She had some pole positions in class. She had a couple of podiums and fastest laps in class. And now after the first victory, I think they will really try to keep the momentum coming into the final rounds of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo North American Series. That will have one more round in America at the Virginia International Raceway before they are off to Portimao, Portugal, for the final round, which will also be the Finale Mondiale, the World Finals for the Lamborghini trophies. So there will be the American Championships and the European Championships competing together in one big final race. So we're definitely excited to see Ashton Harrison and Charlie Martin, and hopefully also Ashley Freiberg coming back to the Lamborghini races in the near future.
Very exciting weekend, especially for seeing Charlie complete that. Very phenomenal. Now, this upcoming weekend for the National Hot Rod Association, they're going to be at Topeka, Kansas, Heartland Motorsport Park for the Menards National presented by Pet Armor. And it's very exciting because they're coming down to their countdown, which is their version of their playoffs, similar to NASCAR, but bits of a different structure. Starting with Top Fuel, these are the fastest vehicles in NHRA competition. And Brittany Forrest, she is leading that. She secured her spot in the playoffs, the countdown. She has a 75-point lead over second place. Now, what's really significant, the point structure in the National Hot Rod Association, you get 100 points if you win a race, 80 points if you get runner-up, second place. And then it goes by if you lost in the third round, 60 points, 40 points, and first round losers, 20 points. So unless she was to go out in the first round, she's most likely going to continue to hold her points lead in Top Fuel. Now, the other female driver leading in the points is in Pro Stock, Erica Ender. She has several championships in the Pro Stock class in the National Hot Rod Association. She has a 103-point lead and secured her spot in the playoffs. So it's looking really good for her. She's going to be in the playoffs. She's going to be really hard to beat. And the playoffs, of course, will be really exciting for the National Hot Rod Association. They start after the U.S. Nationals. Now in funny car, Alexis DeJoria, she is still 8th place in the points right now. You need to be in the top 10. She could stay in there. There are a couple races left before the U.S. Nationals, and that's where it's really going to matter. She's had some good rush. She got to one final round already this year. And then, of course, in Top Fuel, Leah Pruitt, she is still in the hunt for the playoffs, 6th place right now, so she's well above the cut line of being in the top 10 and advance. And of course, that's going to be the National Hot Rod Association this weekend, Topeka, Kansas. Daniel, what races are you going to be watching this weekend?
Again, not many races, but really interesting ones. So probably the top race this weekend is going to be the start of the FIA World Rallycross Championship, and it's going to be particularly interesting because it's a new era for this championship. So they are going to electric cars. So it's a whole new era for the rallycross, and also we have the very first full-time female entry in World Rallycross, so at the very top level of Rallycross, and it's going to be Clara Andersson, so Swedish driver. Also, we got to know her through Extreme E, and she's the first full-time female entry in the top class of Rallycross. So that's going to be one of the races that we will report on this weekend. But also we have the Porsche Sports Challenge Germany, with Katie Schreiner going to have an appearance there. And also there's a young driver called Laura Marie Geisler, who is racing there for, I think it's her first season racing in GT4 in Porsche in that championship in Germany. And so I think that these are, and that of course we have also NASCAR Truck Series with Haley Deegan. So not many this weekend, but some really interesting ones.
And of course, we encourage everyone to visit the website Behind the Helmet. As you can see some of the races as he talked about, you can follow the races live as they're happening as well. And racersbehindthehelmet.com, all the stories from Daniel and his team from the past race weekend and feature stories as well. So a lot going on as always. Even if the racing seasons are starting to come down towards the end, it's always that time, Daniel, where I know already it's crazy this weekend. Last Formula E race of the year. They're going to be done. W Series, they got a long break until we get to Singapore. Then that championship is going to resume. So we still got a lot of racing to cover. We encourage everyone to be sure to comment, like, and subscribe to us right here on the Grid Network. And follow us on social media. We're on just about every platform: TikTok, Instagram. We live stream on Twitch, Facebook, you name it. And if you visit our LinkedIn page, we got some opportunities to be part of our team right here. And of course, our team continue to grow thanks to the investment of our Patreons, folks that buy us a coffee. Very excited to see the growth right here in the Grid Network. And of course, Big Bound Investing. Be sure to visit public.com. Use the referral code GridNet. Get free stocks to start investing in the stock market, and they have tools to learn about investing in the stock market. So you're not just making uninformed decisions. You're making decisions from podcasts, your friends, new friends, and experts that have the tools there at public.com for the stock market. And Daniel, thank you so much for your time as always for today's show. For Daniel Zeri at Racers Girls Behind the Helmet, I'm Joe Santiago. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.